In Venezuela, recovery tasks continue in the locality of Las Tejerias after a landslide provoked by Hurricane Julia's heavy rains. Social discontent is boiling up in Haiti in the wake of a possible foreign intervention called by Prime Minister Ariel Henry. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that he is ready to supply energy to Europe and proposed to create the largest gas transportation hub for the bloc in Turkiye. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, thanked the international community for their support and solidarity after the landslide that occurred on October 8th in the town of Las Tejerias, Aragua State. During the execution of the plan of action to address the emergency, the Venezuelan head of state said over 3,000 public officials and members of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces were deployed to assist the victims of the natural disaster. In addition, President Nicolás Maduro Moros thanked the international community for their support and solidarity following the tragedy.
Yesterday, I said that Venezuela was grateful, as I am, from the expression of solidarity and support from the whole world. I'm grateful for the support and solidarity from all around the world, and where everyone who wants to send help to Venezuela is welcome too. Give and receive. Give love, solidarity, support to the people who need it, and our people also need it.
The Ministry of Education in El Salvador confirmed that public and private educational centers, including universities, resumed on-site and virtual classes after Hurricane Julia. The only exception were the most affected municipalities. According to the ministry, students returned to school after several days of intense rains and winds. A significant number of them were evacuated due to the emergency situation. School activities will remain suspended in 52 municipalities where authorities warned about high risks of floods and landslides. Throughout the Central American nation, recovery works intensified as a result of the effects of the meteorological event, which left considerable danger in low-lying areas. Authorities evacuated more than 900 people after heavy rainfall caused the Rio Grande, which is a local river in the area, to burst its banks and forced to tear special measures in 2 municipalities of the department of San Miguel. Representatives of indigenous and Afro-descendant peoples gathered in the Ecuadorian capital Quito and urged authorities attending the annual climate conference COP27 to take definitive and concrete actions to fight climate change. At a press conference, the General Director of the Andean Coordinator of Indigenous Organizations, Benito Calixto, said the most vulnerable people are those who are resisting in the indigenous territories. Hence, they are demanding that concrete actions be taken to save the planet. The statement was made in the framework of the first meeting for the liberation of indigenous and Afro-descendant peoples. The Andean Coordinator is an organization that represents Andean original indigenous peoples of Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. It was established on July 17, 2006, in its founding Congress held in Cusco, Peru.
Life is in danger. For this reason, we are appealing to those who made decisions, and in addition to this, we demand that all the damage that have been caused in our territories be repaired. That is why from Quito we made a call to this COP27. Stop launching for solutions. We want solutions and concrete actions.
It is important that within these cups there is no longer folklore. They no longer use us as an ornament and say if the indigenous peoples were present, they approved and are part of these negotiations. We need real, effective participation where our proposals are really reflected.
On Wednesday, Nigerian authorities offered updated data on the damage caused by recent floods that have affected this African nation. According to the Premium Times information, Nigeria recorded more than 500 dead, 1.5 million injured, and 1.4 million displaced as the tragic consequences of floods caused by heavy downpours ravaging. In addition, 90,000 homes were damaged by the rains that started late last July 31st in the 36 states into which the country is divided, which also washed away crops and killed animals. However, this is a partial tally and report, as the specialized media forecast that the following and the overflowing of rivers and dams in Nigeria might continue and rise the grim numbers. Now we have other stories. Former Brazilian president and current presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva rallied in the city of Belford Roxo in the state of Rio de Janeiro ahead of the second round of the presidential election on October 30th.
It is a victory tour because we are here to win the elections and give Brazil directions. We urgently need to put an end to the lie industry. It cannot be possible that this country is taken over by lies every day. 5, 6 fake news, trying to make a society life based on a lie.
We'll take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Protests continued in Haiti to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, a month since the beginning of the protests that have kept the country's main oil hub blocked. Over the past weeks, the Caribbean country experienced violent demonstrations and looting, following the announcement by the head of the government of an increase in fuel prices. Since September 12th, members of the G9 gangs and allies limited access to Barra, where 70% of the country's fuel is stored, with the police unable to regain control of the area. Social organizations also protested against the high cost of living and rejected the request for foreign military aid, considering it an attack on the country's sovereignty. Now we continue. The International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC in Colombia, reported on Tuesday that about 2,000 people were victims of explosive devices between January 2018 and August 2022, I beg your pardon, in that country as a consequence of armed groups' conflicts. The figures, reporting at least 1,938 victims, include those impacted by different types of explosive devices, such as anti-personnel mines, explosive remnants of war, controlled detonation explosive devices, and dropped explosive devices. The International Committee of the Red Cross just launched a campaign to raise awareness among Colombians about the confinement, displacement, and other invisible effects suffered by rural communities. And Wednesday is the last day of Colombia's political and cultural gathering, known as Minga, organized by the Regional Indigenous Committee of Cauca, with a debate in which President Gustavo Petro is expected to participate. The Minga has been taking place since October 10th in the municipality of Caldono in the department of Valle del Cauca. During the gathering, the participants expect to talk with President Petro about different issues, especially the land invasion and the announcement made by the Ministry of Agriculture to buy 16 farms in Cauca to find a solution to the land problem. International guests from Bolivia, Ecuador, Mexico, and Chile will also attend the event, who will carry out different activities activities that seek the vindication of rights and the defense of life, territory, and peace. We move on to other topics. In Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei denounced that the protests of recent days are the result of Western manipulation of the nation's progress. The leader of the Islamic Revolution stated in a meeting with the new members of the Discernment Council of Iran that the acts of vandalism of the last weeks were not spontaneous but directed from abroad. He also assured that the adversaries will continue with the hostile policy as long as the people continue to support the Islamic system. Ali Khamenei also pointed out that the actions of the United States, Israel, and the European countries are provoking the destabilization of the Persian country in reaction to its development. Three Kenyan teachers are missing after Al-Shabaab militants struck a local school in Mandera County near the Somali border on Wednesday. According to Northeastern Police Commander George Serra, the heavily armed militants said they were after three non-local Christian teachers who were present at the Libehia primary school, prompting the teachers to escape. The attack was disrupted by a group of National Police reservists in the area who responded and engaged the attackers in a battle. The same group of militants also targeted a communication mast in a shopping center, but were also repulsed by the reservists who were manning it. Al-Shabaab militants usually destroy telecommunications posts to disrupt police response and communications in the area along the common border before they could inflict harm on the locals, especially schools and other learning institutions. And the military ruled Myanmar on Wednesday sentenced activist and outspoken leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 6 more years in prison for alleged corruption. These are the latest in a string of sentences that Suu Kyi has faced since she was ousted in a military coup in February 2021. With Wednesday's sentencing, the 77-year-old Nobel Peace Laureate's sentence has been extended to a total of 26 years in prison for alleged corruption, incitement to violence, breach of COVID-19 rules, electoral fraud, and violation of the official secrets law. The military coup d'etat in Myanmar on February 1, 2021 has plunged the country into a deep political, social, and economic crisis, opening a spiral of violence and repression. And Thailand will toughen its gun possession and drug laws, the Interior Ministry said on Wednesday, following the nursery massacre of 36 people in the kingdom's worst mass killing. The country was left reeling after a former police officer forced his way into a small nursery in northeastern Naklan last week, murdering 24 children and their teachers before killing his wife, their child, and himself. The attack was carried out with a knife and legally acquired gun. And while Thailand has a huge number of firearms in circulation, mass shootings are rare. Interior Minister Anupong Paujingda said the government will require tougher qualifications for new gun owners, as well as increasing up checks on existing firearm holders.
Our new qualification will include mental health examination as well. We are still finalizing the details on whether the request for guns would need approval from doctors or not. For example, officials who want to possess guns would need to be certified by their supervisors that their behaviors are not a threat to society, like being an alcoholic or disposed to losing their head or having a bad temper. In conclusions, we will assess behaviors as well.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that he is ready to supply energy to Europe and proposed to create the largest gas transportation hub for the bloc in Turkiye. Speaking at the Russia Energy Week conference in Moscow, the head of state said his country could redirect supplies intended for the damaged Nord Stream pipelines to the Black Sea to create a hub in Turkey, or even use the one intact part of Nord Stream 2 to supply the European Union. Meanwhile, Turkish Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Faith Dönmez, said that President Putin's idea of moving gas transit is technically possible and also should be studied in detail. According to Turkish state-run broadcaster TRT Haber, President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan will discuss the idea on moving gas transit from the Nord Stream pipelines to the Black Sea during a meeting in Astana on Thursday.
Russia is ready for the start of deliveries. The ball is in the European Union's court. If they want, then the taps can be turned on, and that's that.
In the framework of the Russia Energy Week conference in Moscow, President Vladimir Putin said Russia will not supply energy resources to countries that will likely set a price on them.
We will not supply energy resources to those countries that set price cap on them, to those who, instead of business partnerships and market mechanisms, prefer cheatings, tricks, and shameless blackmail. And we have been living in such a paradigm in the political sphere for decades. I want to say that we'll not act to our own detriment.
Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced Nord Stream leaks as an act of international terrorism during his speech at the plenary session of the Russian Energy Week.
Talking about sabotage on the pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2, there is no doubt that this is an act of international terrorism, the purpose of which is to undermine the energy security of an entire continent.
On Wednesday, Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, announced the arrest of 8 people involved in the bomb attack on the Crimean bridge on October 8th. Among the detainees are 5 Russians and 3 people from Ukraine and Armenia, and so far the Russian authorities have identified the participation of 12 people in this terrorist attack. The FSB and the investigative committee found that the attack on the Crimean bridge was organized by the Director of Intelligence of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The investigation places the explosive cargo first in Bulgaria, then transferred to Armenia, and then to Crimea via Russia. 2 sections of the highway collapsed as a result of the bridge explosion. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that his country will respond proportionally if the Ukrainian government continues to carry out attacks on Russian territory. And the Turkish National Defense Ministry confirmed on Wednesday that 11 more ships left Ukrainian ports under the Istanbul grain export deal. Through a statement, the ministry said the shipments continued as planned, although they did not disclose its point of origin. Turkiye, the United Nations, Russia and Ukraine signed an agreement in Istanbul on July 22nd to resume grain exports from the 3 Ukrainian Black Sea ports, which paused after the start of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine in February. Since the first ship left Ukraine under the deal, nearly 300 ships with over 7 tons of agricultural products have left the ports. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.